Gennady Triple G Golovkin vs Canelo Alvarez was one of the best fights in recent memory. It was clear from the time that the fight was announced that these two men were the perfect stylistic matchup for each other. Triple G is a high-volume pressure fighter who likes to corner his opponents and finish them off against the ropes. In contrast, Canelo relies on unorthodox counterpunches that come from odd angles. The question going into the fight was if Canelo could effectively counter Triple G's aggressive style. Triple G's main tools to apply pressure and corner his opponent are a stiff, heavy jab, a shifting right hand, and pushing his opponent back at close range. Canelo had an immediate answer to Triple G's shifting cross, throwing a powerful uppercut when Triple G leaned offline. Most of these did not connect, but they did stop Golovkin's momentum, taking pressure off Canelo and allowing him to follow up with more punches. Canelo also set up counters to Triple G's body by sidestepping out of the way. When Golovkin tried to press close to Canelo to push him back, he hit a short but powerful uppercut. While some of his best weapons were not working, Triple G's jab was still landing effectively. Even so, Canelo was able to stand his ground in the center of the ring, using head movement and quick counters to the body. With Golovkin's most threatening punches minimized, Canelo was able to stake his claim in the center of the ring. Triple G clearly respected Canelo's right hand, backing up nearly every time he threw it. For the first 3 rounds, it looked like Canelo had Triple G figured out. But then, Golovkin adjusted. Triple G had realized how overreactive Canelo was to his cross. He began to mix it up with feints and rear uppercuts. When Triple G mixed these in with his off-rhythm jabs, it became very hard for Canelo to predict what was coming next. In this way, Triple G was able to slowly and methodically build pressure on Canelo and begin to control the ring. Here in the 4th, Golovkin feints a cross, and Canelo responds with a jab. Triple G darts out and back to the same position. He moves his head offline, and then lands a jab on Canelo's guard, who steps back this time. Golovkin feints another cross, prompting Canelo to raise his guard, and Triple G splits it with his jab. Canelo takes a few steps forward now, trying to reclaim lost ground, and shoots his own jab. But Triple G lands a counter cross. Canelo's now lost more ground, but tries to move forward again with a jab. Triple G pulls, and this time he's able to sell his cross by simply leaning forward and twisting. Canelo backs up, raises his guard and sinks down, but Triple G times him and lands a jab. Canelo throws a counter right, but Triple G slips, jabs, and feints across again. This was a painstaking process fought over inches, but over the next few rounds, Triple G began to move Canelo back towards the ropes more and more often. But Canelo often prefers his backup against the ropes, throwing powerful counters or suddenly charging forwards. Fortunately for Golovkin, he didn't fall for this trick. Triple G usually throws loaded, curving blows when he gets an opponent against the ropes. But this time, he chose to stay at range and pick Canelo apart with straight, low-risk punches. By staying at range and feinting, Triple G was able to land several well-placed shots, stepping in to pick at Canelo, and then quickly stepping out of harm's way. By the 6th round, the fight was still very back and forth. Here we see Triple G and Canelo both catch each other's jabs, and Canelo tries to counter with a hard right. But Triple G slips the punch and throws his own cross. He stalks Canelo to the ropes. At this point, Canelo is so responsive to Golovkin's right hand that he reacts every time Triple G simply leans in. Triple G hits him with a body hook cross combination, jabs out to a safe range, and then hits him with another 1-2. Golovkin tries to keep the pressure on, but Canelo surprises him and rushes out, backing him to the center of the ring, and then connecting with a powerful uppercut body hook combination. This same kind of scenario would play out over the next several rounds. But more and more, Canelo began to back up to the corners, and then pivot and pull away from Triple G's cross. While this technique was impressive, it usually left him in a position where he was unable to counter himself. In the 8th, Triple G must have felt that Canelo was weakening. He became comfortable pressing forward again. He had mixed success, eating a devastating uppercut from Canelo through the space in his guard. In the 9th, Triple G lowered and tightened his guard and pushed forward even harder. He was finally able to land his signature curving punches from close range. But then, once again, Triple G got careless and took an incredible right hand after pushing Canelo back to the corner. At this point, both fighters had taken shots that would put most men in the hospital and simply shrugged it off. Undisturbed by each other's power, the next 3 rounds would be a total war. Triple G upped the pressure even more in the 10th. Although he took a number of body shots as he pressed forward, he was able to bully Canelo through most of the round. In the 11th, Canelo got aggressive, and we got to see some amazing exchanges like this one. Triple G and Alvarez both jab. Canelo catches Golovkin's hand on his guard, and Golovkin slips to the inside and throws a powerful cross. Canelo just manages to slip it, and then charges forward. Golovkin weaves away, and the exchange ends with no clear winner. In this exchange, Canelo pulls away from Golovkin's right, and counters with a right of his own. Triple G ducks under it, and throws a long hook that Canelo just slips. Alvarez throws a looping jab, and Triple G follows it back to smother Canelo. But Canelo controls Golovkin's lead hand and head, and shoots a short, straight right into Golovkin's chin. In the 12th, both Canelo and Triple G put it all on the line. Canelo attacked with everything he had, and Triple G took the shots and still pressed forward relentlessly. They battled it out until the final bell. While the fight was close, with both fighters landing a near equal amount of power shots, Triple G landed far more punches overall and controlled the pace of the fight. While there is a legitimate argument for a draw, I personally feel that Triple G won a majority of the rounds. But as I said, it was a very close fight, one deserving of a rematch. Canelo Alvarez is one of the most talented boxers of this generation. He incorporates an odd mixture of seemingly contrasting techniques that, nonetheless, work incredibly well together, creating a style that's both unique and highly entertaining. Canelo employs a relatively narrow, sideways stance, but uses it in conjunction with the forward, squared-up guard, and this seeming mismatch allows him to do a number of things. First, his long-bladed stance allows for great linear movement, allowing him to explode in and out very quickly. It also lets him lean far back, adding a fair amount of defensive head movement to his toolkit. At the same time, his squared-up upper body positions his rear hand closer to his opponent, helping to facilitate his lightning-fast counters. This particular mix of guard and stance does mean that Canelo sometimes needs to drag his rear leg far forward off of his cross, occasionally taking him out of his preferred stance and leaving him more exposed. But, by its very nature, it also necessitates a lot of hip rotation, increasing the power of his rear hand. Conversely, because of his sideways stance, his lead hand attacks lack the potential for rotation, but he still manages a great deal of power by shifting his weight, stepping in hard, and loading up on his punches. But where Canelo really shines is his ability to counter multiple punches while taking no damage himself. It's hard enough to effectively time and counter one shot. To do the same for 3 to 5 punches in a row is absolutely insane. But Canelo is able to do this because he works head movement into his counters. He frequently utilizes head rolls, a defensive movement so dangerous that Dempsey questioned whether or not to even mention it in his book. Canelo doesn't even use it as a last resort. Instead, it's a high-risk, high-reward strategy to stay closer to his opponents. Most of the time, Canelo will take punches off of his high guard, but when he sees an opening to counter, he puts his entire body into the punch, relying solely on head movement to keep him defensive. Before his punch even connects, he's already ducking and weaving away from the particular kind of counter that's most likely to be thrown as a response to his attack. As an extra bonus, his upper body movement can load even more momentum into his punches. This strategy works so well because most fighters throw with established combinations and counters. These follow-up punches are popular because they work, and have been tried and tested time and time again by generations of boxers. However, they can become predictable, and this helps Canelo train sequences that keeps him one step ahead of his competitors. In contrast to many of his opponents, Canelo is anything but predictable. One of his best attributes is that he tends to double up on punches off of the same hand. Many fighters find multiple strikes off of the same hand difficult, as it can break their rhythm and limit the power of the second punch. But Canelo knows how to step or drop his weight in between each punch, and his combinations are not only highly unpredictable, but pack considerable power. Canelo does such a great job opening up his opponent's guard by mixing up his targets, keeping his competitors constantly guessing which hand will attack which part of their body. As a result, they often try to defend their head when they should be defending their body, or vice versa. Even the path of Canelo's punches are unpredictable. He consistently employs directional feints, altering the trajectory of his punch halfway through to connect from a vastly different angle than his opponent was expecting. By doing this, he tricks fighters into blocking the wrong punch, and they create openings for him. All of these attributes go into making one of the most unique and effective styles we can see in the ring today. Canelo Alvarez is one of the most elusive, slick, defensive-minded fighters in boxing today. And Canelo Alvarez is one of the most aggressive, powerful, offensive pressure fighters in boxing today. Canelo is both of these things, a rare duality that's been pulled off by few. Alvarez has the distinction of being an aggressive counterpuncher, something that requires insane reflexes, terrifying power, and most of all, countless hours of hard work and devotion to the craft. Everyone seemed to like learning how Tyson used his unique drills to send opponents tumbling to the canvas. So in this video, let's look at some of the drills that have helped make Canelo one of the greatest knockout artists alive today. While most successful pressure fighters mainly rely on either head movement or an active guard, Canelo is brilliant at both, and can even combine them together. We'll start with head movement drills. In case you haven't noticed, Canelo is kind of good at this. Unlike many otherwise gifted fighters, Canelo uses head movement for what it's actually for, setting up counters. Pulls are usually underutilized by pressure fighters, but they work great because pressure fighters are usually lead leg heavy, giving them a lot of room to pull back already. In this clip, Canelo's trainer combines bag work with the reaction drill, using a small towel to prompt Canelo to pull and counter with the cross and lead hook. And here, Canelo practices the same drill with a foam tube. It seems a little silly, until you see this clip of Canelo using this exact same sequence against an opponent. Pull, cross, lead hook, and he's out cold. True, towels and foam may seem like odd tools to create one of the best technical fighters out there. However, they have the potential to move faster than the trainer may be able to punch, and more importantly, they keep the trainer out of the way, so that Canelo can use the heavy bag. What this means is that Canelo has the chance to both react to something as fast as a punch, and then counter as hard as he wants to, without any risk to himself or his trainer. Drills are all about repetition, and this is a brilliant way to simulate real combat as closely as possible, as many times as possible. Also, it allows Canelo to do something extraordinary. Like Ali, Canelo can turn his head to let punches barely skim his cheek. This would usually be extremely dangerous to practice with a partner, but the foam gives Canelo as many tries as necessary. As for Ali, I wouldn't have put it past him to have developed this tactic all on his own through sheer bravery and recklessness. While turning his head certainly looks amazing, most of Canelo's knockouts come off of a regular pull, followed quickly by a counter uppercut. In this clip, Canelo swings a bag to practice the timing of pulling into an uppercut. This may seem like a very simple drill, but it trains using power from the correct distance. That being said, Canelo's work here on the reflex bag is much more indicative of how he usually moves while performing this sequence. Notice how Canelo practices dropping his arms as he pulls away from the bag. This does two things. First, it helps him to move faster by counterbalancing his torso. This works in the same way that a kickboxer can swing his arms to increase the speed of his kick. And secondly, once Canelo has conditioned his opponents to landing on his high guard, then it can come as a major surprise when their punch no longer meets any resistance. They tend to overreach, driving themselves directly into Canelo's rear uppercut. Of course, he can use the same counterbalance tactics with hooks as well. An interesting fact, Floyd Mayweather was a huge fan of using it to set up his crosses and overhands. Next drill. If you're impressed by how Canelo can pull off amazing highlight reel knockouts with just a pull, you should see what he can do with the slip. Here we see Canelo using a reflex bag. This is the perfect tool to practice slipping and countering. This is because the bag returns fire automatically. Notice how Canelo practices tapping the bag to his shoulder, simulating him just slipping a punch. Notice here how Canelo's punch is in the exact same position as the ball as he counters with a hard right. Slips also work very well while sidestepping, which can greatly help to cut off the ring. What's more, the moving torso shifts weight between legs, helping to load up counter punches with more power. Notice how Canelo will also practice slipping as he punches, aligning his fist with the bag as it comes back. This is a much more advanced principle that many fighters lack, getting inside your opponent's punches. Notice here how Canelo's slip moves his shoulder closer to the center line. Here we see Canelo practice cover blocking before returning a counter. Notice that Canelo doesn't simply lift his arm, but turns his body into the block. This both dispels the force of the blow and loads up his next punch. Canelo is also a big fan of reinforcing his blocks, as he does here, using a parry to reinforce his cover block before returning a hard counter left. In this drill, Canelo does something subtle and far less common. He uses a forearm block to deflect his coach's jab before countering. This is a very rare technique, but it's led to some terrific knockouts. Notice here how Canelo sends his opponent's jab flying over him, even as he moves forward. At the same time he slips, once again reinforcing his defense, and intercepts his opponent's jab with a hard cross. Eventually, his opponent's brain realizes it just got hit with a major blow, and sends a signal to the rest of his body that it's time to fall down. The great thing about a forearm block is that it can be a block, a feint, or the start of a real jab all at once. But Canelo doesn't always counter. He's also amazing at finishing his opponents, and a big part of that is his use of effective combinations that are designed to break through an opponent's guard. In these clips, Canelo practices doubling up on the lead side, putting insane power into both punches. Since fighters are usually expecting a punch off the other hand, this can take them by surprise. Another idea behind this is to get the opponent to adjust their guard to block the first punch, thereby creating an opening for the second punch. For instance, attacking the body with a low hook can expose the opponent's head to a high hook, and vice versa. Or an uppercut can incentivize them to tighten their guard, exposing their sides. The results speak for themselves. That's it for
his professional record: 62 victories, 39 wins by knockout. De Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, the former middleweight world champion, former junior middleweight world champion, former light heavyweight world champion, the reigning, defending WBC, WBA, WBO super middleweight champion of the world, Saul Canelo Alvarez.
Hailing from Guadalajara, Mexico, Saul Canelo Alvarez is one of the most well-rounded and accomplished boxers of all time. If you've watched elite-level boxing in the last decade, you get it. But for those of you who haven't, here are some highlights from his 67-fight campaign.
Kirkland does, the uppercut caught him, coming forward.
Big Red started boxing professionally at only 15 years old. And by 20, he became the youngest ever WBC light middleweight champion. He later became world champion in 4 weight classes, where he attained unified status in 3. And as of the writing of this video, he is the first and only undisputed super middleweight champion of the 4-belt era. So, if you've gotten to watch him, he's terrific. But if you sign up to fight him, he's terrifying. Canelo has deep positional understanding, a top-tier defensive skill set, and rock-solid durability to pick up the slack. In addition to that, he has consciousness-altering power in both hands, with setups to the body that make my stomach hurt just watching them.
To keep Canelo off of him.
No, he doesn't. Down he goes. Body shot, and he is being shot down.
His overall game is something to behold, especially his counters, which are ever-present and punishing. But today, we're going to get specific and take a quick look at one of Canelo's sharpest weapons, the left hook. Whether it's aimed to the body or the head, Canelo's lead hook is one of the most crushing punches in a rather complete arsenal. Plus, the setups range from surgical to something resembling a battering ram. So, let's start with his fighting stance and work our way in. If you pay attention to the way Canelo stands, you'll notice something interesting. David addressed this in his Canelo video from a few years ago, but I'll briefly touch on it here because it bolsters his left hook. His feet take a somewhat bladed stance, while his upper body remains square. In short, he has the best of both worlds when it comes to the tactical advantages of the bladed and square stance. Since Canelo's feet are on a similar line, he has enhanced linear footwork, able to move in and out with impressive speed. Additionally, this stance bolsters his ability to rock away from punches, a critical skill for generating pull counters, something that Big Red can do with lethal effectiveness. Now to his upper body. Keeping his shoulders mostly square has its own advantages as well. It allows him to really settle behind the high guard, and it keeps his vision straight forward so he can see the punches coming. Both of these things work to maximize Canelo's excellent vision, thus enhancing his ability to bite on counters. But what does it specifically do for the lead hook? The combination of a square torso with a bladed stance loads Canelo's hips for powerful lead hand punches at nearly all times. On the jab, for example, he gets extra power as he steps forward and turns his upper body to elongate the punch. And when it comes to the lead hook, he essentially only needs to dip his stance a little bit to generate insane power. A slight step, or a minor inside slip is all it takes for his left hook to be ready to soar. Think of it like a loaded spring, ready to snap at the smallest amount of extra pressure. Plus, Canelo really throws himself into the left hook rotation when he lets it go, especially to the body. He seemingly channels most of his weight into his lead leg and glove, sometimes causing his rear leg to lift off the canvas. And as nice as it is to watch Canelo's left hooks in isolation, he rarely throws them that way. Instead, he unleashes a seemingly endless barrage of them, unless he's fighting a southpaw. Even then, he'll still find a way to fit in a few somewhere. Canelo launches the left hook in a ton of combinations, but the ones I want to highlight now are when he doubles up on the left hand. This is really tough to do for most boxers because alternating lefts and rights is a more natural way to generate power. And while it's technically challenging for an attacking fighter to double up on the left hook, it's just plain concerning for the person on the receiving end, because it is extremely disruptive to an opponent's defensive flow, since most fighters rattle off punches by alternating their left and right. Here against Plant, Canelo throws a left hook to the body, and Plant avoids a second left hook by ducking down. But when he comes up expecting to see a right, he ducks himself into a third left hook. For me, Big Red's sneakiest multi-left hook combinations are when he alternates high and low with the lead hand. It looks absolutely stunning the way he touches the guard with the left hook, only to immediately shock the liver as the opponent shells behind their guard. One of my favorite highlights is from his destruction of Yildirim, where he lifts the guard with a lead uppercut before slamming the ribs with a hook. Guard manipulation at its finest. This type of attack is Canelo's most reliable way to set up the liver punch. He is also just as able to manipulate the guard with punches using both hands, sticking opponent into their shell only to polish off the combination with the left to the body. The choice of where to defend next is made that much more difficult by the trajectory of Canelo's left hooks. Spoiler, the way he throws them is deliberate, deceptive, and absolutely devastating. The standard left hook to the head travels along an even plane with the canvas. While Canelo definitely does this, he'll often start his head hook low, selling his commitment to a body blow with his eyes, posture, and even the entry itself. But as his prey goes to protect the liver, they take leather straight to the brain. This tactic is also called a directional feint. It is one of the primary ways that Canelo lands left hooks to the head, and it's even more effective after the opponent is already squeamish about taking any more knuckles to the guts. This creates a conundrum for the opponent, since they cannot predict which target Canelo's glove is actually rocketing toward, and either one is a bad time. Here, Canelo's game is a treasure trove of tricks and tactics that any boxer with enough skill and training time should think about mirroring. Even if you never master the left hook to the level that Canelo has, the principles of guard manipulation are something that practitioners of any combat sport can take advantage of. Using attacks to open other ones is a critical skill that not only lets you connect when you want, but it also allows you to stay one step ahead. From The Modern Martial Artist, this has been Kobe McKinley, wishing you happy training.